lecturer who came from a very conservative background, who refused to look at female students?
Personally, I never wanted to move abroad. My mom will tell you that even when I was a kid, I would say, even if I go to study abroad, I will always come back.
Very, very close to me, that's my uncle's passing, to sort of sit down in grief. I started questioning my life again, saying, what am I doing with my life? Where is the true Priya?
Namaste and welcome to Indian Women Abroad, a podcast where we share stories of women who often get lost in translation. For the first episode, I have with me Priya, who is the founder of Punar, a sustainable brand. Now, one of the first reasons why I wanted Priya as the first guest on this podcast was, in a way, she's responsible for this idea to come to fruition. Back on August 15, on Indian Independence Day, Priya was one of the co-organizers for an event where she asked me to moderate a panel, where I came across incredible stories of Indian women who had achieved so much, but their stories were not talked about enough. When I came home, I looked up if there was a platform to do that, and I realized not so much. And that's how Indian Women Abroad came to life. So for the inaugural episode, of course, it made sense for me to invite Priya for the first episode, talk about her journey and what's life like for her as an Indian woman abroad. Welcome to the show, Priya.
Thank you so much for having me, Munal. And I cannot tell you how much joy this gives me to hear the background, the story. And may I also say, you were the perfect person to moderate that panel of amazing, obviously, Indian women here in Melbourne coming together. And that was our first ever all-women Independence Day panel discussion too, wasn't it? So
it was.
Yeah, it was super special, right from moderator to the panelists. It was a brand new beginning, and I have to thank you because, look, after that, you've taken away, thought about it, just like how you are. You've done your investigation and thought through things and figured out how we can create something which is of greater good for the community. And here we are with the Indian Women Abroad. So congratulations.
Thank you.
It is my absolute honor and privilege to be on this platform, podcast with you. So, and I love collaborating with you. So that's hands down. Yeah.
Thank you so much. But today is about you, and we're going to talk about your journey. And we're going to start from the start about when you came to Australia, what year, the reason you came, and take it away.
Yeah, sure. It all started 25 years ago. So this was actually the early 2000s when I hopped on a plane, said goodbye to my very nervous and anxious parents, as they should be, because I was this teenage girl just saying bye, hopping on a plane with the student visa and getting to Adelaide. And the background story behind that, look, I always was sort of thinking of going outside, whether to US or somewhere else for studies. For undergrad itself, because I'd gotten into one of the streams of engineering and didn't really enjoy it that much. I was thinking of, maybe switching over. And in the meantime, again, this is where the universe comes in the picture, right? Me and my dad, we just see this Australian universities exhibition, and he's like, okay, do you want to just check that out? Check it out. And I sent emails to the Australian universities all around, by the way, not just in Adelaide, some in Melbourne, and also I particularly remember even the Queensland universities about, investigating about electronics and a few other things. What are the options available? They sent me these thick brochures.
Right.
Came back home, both mum and dad, they have always been super supportive of anything that I want to do. So they go, okay, do you want to go? Right. It's going to be a challenge, but somehow, let's make it happen. And that's all it started. And interestingly, I'm referring back to, how you talked about Australia and immigration. even 25 plus years ago, I tell you, it was still a bit of a challenge to get that student visa too, right?
Yeah.
They were asking me questions like, you've already enrolled in engineering back in India. Why would you want to come to Australia anyway? And I'm like, I love new experiences. And I said, I've never seen this microelectronics things that they were talking about in Adelaide. Like, I really want to explore, because at that point, obviously, I thought I'd be working for a company like Intel or whatever, so that was, obviously the teenage dream, right? Like working for a big multinational corporation and stuff like that down the track after finishing my engineering, of course. So I sent back my answers. So they were grilling me, I can tell you. Even at that point, I was like, whoa, it's not very easy. But very interestingly, I've always kind of had this fond connection to Australia anyway, because, I ran all the books, Malgudi Days. We had a piece from one of his travel stories about Australia and him visiting, down under, and trying to find out how different it is, and the concept of how people go to work in the, during the daytime, and apparently building house at night time. He goes, we don't do that in India. And, he was talking about koalas, kangaroos and everything and all. It kind of sat with me, and I know you're going to laugh at this. I still remember after reading that piece, I think I was probably in like year 5, quite young. And I went to my mom and I was telling her, one day I'll go to Australia. And I'm sure my mom must have turned around, because, she's like busy juggling her own things, saying, I'm sure you will, and back to doing stuff. But I remember that, telling her that, one day I'm going to Australia. But obviously I didn't mean that, I was going to migrate to Australia. But I had this, tug in the heart.
Right.
And as a child, I know you do a lot of things and you forget all about it too, because, you learn whatever it is. But that's one of the things that kind of sat somewhere deep in my mind and my heart. And I haven't forgotten it to date. Here they go. I'm in my 40s. I'm very open to say that, because I've been here long enough now, 25 long years. So, I know we're going all around the place, but it's like, there's bits and pieces of this which all came together, and that's how, all started. And there was a bit of a grilling from the, the Australian Immigration Department as well. Went through all that too, and I got my visa, and then I arrived in Adelaide 25 plus years ago. So that's my story, and that's how it all started. And the Adelaide accent. So
when you landed in Adelaide, what was your experience like? Did you have someone? Did you know someone? Did you stay at a hostel? What was the experience like?
Yeah, I will actually go back a step, because my first entry point to Australia was through Perth.
Okay.
Because at that time, there weren't many flights, not like now, how you have 2 flights a day sometimes. Maybe twice a week. That's maximum, right? So I entered through Perth. So that's where I had to clear the immigration and switch to a domestic flight. And needless to say, coming from India, and that too, I was leaving the country very first time, all alone. Parents with so much love, they packed so many things with an oversized, luggage. Then I finished the immigration, the domestic terminal. They go, no, too heavy, can't do this.
Right.
Do you have another bag? And I'm going, oh my God, are you kidding me? And then they're like, can you get rid of something? And I said, no way. I can't do that. Do you know? I'm like, no way. I don't know what I'm doing. My mom and dad, they've never really prepped me, and I'm all set for at least few months. So I'm not getting rid of anything. Just give me another options. Luckily, again, using a couple of maybe I think 2 other bags. And because, I wasn't coming in for the very first time, as weird and wonderful as Australia is, you push back and you just, make a logical argument. That's what I find. Australians do love a bit of a, sort of a banter or a argument. And at times, and there is racism too, I'm not going to deny that, but at times, quite often, you can just pin it straight to go, oh, you're racist, you're doing this to me because, I look different. No. But if you just kind of push back a little and go, no, this is the reason and this is the stuff, what would you do, kind of thing, and that's what I did, right? Me being me, I'm like, I can't sit quiet, can I? So they go, I still remember, it was a guy, immigration officer, he goes, fine, I get you, okay, and he goes, okay, fine, let's, put it in a couple of other bags, and it's fine, we'll make multiple bag allowance just for you, because, it's your first time you're entering the country, and it was sometimes all so tired, packing those bags.
Right.
At that time, I was remembering my great-grandmother, who apparently got, people in and got people to dig a well in her own backyard because there wasn't water and somebody was mistreating, people who had the well, that family apparently, they had mistreated some around them. So my grandma's like, she wanted great-grandma, she wanted justice. So she straight goes, no, we're going to get in this, and a group of people together doing that. So I was just leaning on that story, right, and remembering her strength, and I'm going, of course, I haven't, come on, I'm moving here, I'm paying good fees, of course, as an international student, I'm bringing, something to this country. I have every right to be here, and, so what if my bags are big? Just sort of let me in. So anyway, so long story short, I got that. And when I got to Adelaide again, it was my absolute privilege that there was this beautiful family who spoke same dialect as I do, Kannada, because I come from South India, Karnataka. I was born and raised in Mysore, but my dad's family is in Coorg, where we go coffee and stuff like that. So anyway, it's always, right, a friend of a friend of a friend always knows somebody, right? So my parents were able to track somebody down in Adelaide just to make sure their child is safe, when she arrives. So I'm so grateful, Nirmala and Dinesh. I don't think they live here anymore. They moved back to India, but I'm forever grateful because, they were of really great support and, did, stay with them. And half the time, look, I wouldn't even remember what I'm doing, jet lag, tired, whatever it is. And also sort of missing home. But funny enough, not having time to miss home because when you're enrolled in for how it's right, all four subjects and, you really have to get on with it. There's no other way. The assessments and the education system in Australia is quite different, right? They expect you to be independent and do a lot of things. So that's another story. So I'll explain that further. But I had the privilege of leaning on a family and also meet a few more people through them. And University of South Australia, a big shout out to them because they had the most incredible support system for international students. I felt very supported every step of the way. So I didn't feel, kind of alone and sort of left out or whatever. And I suppose maybe part personality, going out, talking to people. So, yeah,
but I think that's very impressive, as a teenager. And that too, 25 years ago when internet was not a huge thing, you could not Google everything or you wanted a solution for. So kudos, Priya. Wow, I'm actually very impressed. And get sort of pushing back at the immigration. I don't think any international student in today's date would think of doing that. They would much rather just get rid of some stuff for the fear that, oh my God, they're going to send me back. Not with you.
No, not with me. Not with me. Ever the, as they say, the contrarian and quite often going the too much person. But when you lift the layers, you'll see the too much is often underpinning curiosity. And when you also see when things are not fair, it's not right, it's not equal, and maybe it's looking right and equal for somebody else, then I'd still want to dig deep and understand why you're doing how you're doing. But do you understand for a certain segment, it's not working. Like, for example, women's rights or whatever it is, for me. But again, whether it's the fear or, the colonization, sort of, the deeply rooted colonized mindset and the authoritarian world which we've grown up in, right, where you're often discouraged to sort of not ask many questions. Luckily for me, my grandmothers are like, go, just sort of speak your mind. Both my parents do, and especially my dad, sort of very much, he was always like human first. No, why not? And, he's also very fair. Whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter. If it's something not right, he will call out. And then same thing to do with my mother too. Yeah. And my grandmother's always like, speak your mind, just go out there, speak up. So that's kind of often, that's again, it's kind of helped my personality because I already, how you're born with a certain type of personality and the nature plus the nurture. So yeah, I'm very grateful. Look, I think I got the genetic, whatever, jackpot you want to say. Yeah. So, and I don't, ever forget that because, imagine if I was born somewhere else where I was told to just keep quiet, put your head down, and this is it. This is, yeah. Who knows what I would be doing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So just going back to your journey as an international student, what was it like 25 years ago? I imagine the classrooms did not have that much diversity as they do today.
Not at all. First of all, the classroom, because I enrolled in electronics and microengineering, by the way, because as I said, look, teenage dream, I thought, okay, if I was in India, I would be aiming for administrative services like the IAS or, IFS, something like that, because that's always, the advocacy and policy has always, interested me because it's just who I am. So obviously not in India anymore, out here. So I'm like, okay, what can I do different? Something, again, I'm like, aligns with my personality, right? That curiosity and kind of that element of pioneering, like saying, what is this, what are we doing? How can we do this? And, how is it going to work for me and everybody? Because that's always, often how I work. So enrolled in electronics and microengineering. I walk into the classroom. I see there's lecture theater, 70 young men and 4 girls. And we're all like, okay, what is this? Because in India, engineering is not that bad in the sense there is that, 50-50 kind of gender equality, at least in terms of attendance. Pay gap, don't get me started, but at least attendance and education perspective, there are some things, like India is like, okay, ahead of the curve, still lots to do when it comes to pay and, pay equality and stuff like that. So that kind of blew my mind and I'm like, what is going on? Luckily for me, of the four girls, 2 of the girls were born and raised here, but they had immigrant parents, right? So they understood, like how it feels like and having that cultural diversity. And my bestie, who's still my bestie, one of my besties, who is back in Adelaide, Sahar, I love you, that, I miss you so much. She's Persian. She arrived in Australia as a refugee. So the minute I walked in, she just asked me one question, are you Indian? Oh my God, the Indian movies. And that's it. Ever since then, we haven't looked back, We bonded. So yeah, the classroom looked very different. Obviously, I was the only Indian girl in the whole class. There was another, I think the Sri Lankan Australian girl, but I can't recollect. She was doing something else. Either she was a year ahead or a year behind, but something different. But she would come to the campus now and then. So it's me and her. I know it's like there wasn't. And then slowly, by the time I was in 3rd year, we saw another person, like, brown, basically South Asian. And we are like, oh, look at that. There were other sort of maybe diverse women, but not really South Asian.
Right.
But mainly predominantly men in the campus. So that was like, wow. And again, when you look at the lecturers as well, mainly men.
Mm-hmm.
And that was again very interesting because sometimes they would always go, you guys, you guys, you guys. We're like, we're here to don't. And it was very interesting. There was a lecturer who came from a very conservative background who refused to look at female students. Just refused.
Wow.
And you had to go see this person, whether it's for marking or, questions or whatever. They still would kind of not really make eye contact. I'm like, is this for real? I'm in Australia. I was expecting far more kind of. So that was a really eye-opener for me and got really fed up. And that's where, by the time I was in third year, me and Saha together, we started this community program along with one of the very few women lecturers, going around to high school teaching kids how to code so that they could enroll in engineering. Yeah, exactly. And we ended up getting a Chancellor's Award 2 years in a row. We didn't do that for award, I tell you. Me and her only thinking was, we're sick and tired of listening to footy, right? We wanted to talk about shoes and handbags, so let's get more women, in kind of, and we went right to the roots and going, okay, how can we fix this? Okay, so me and her, so that was like really, really so much fun. So that's the diversity in the cultural, side of things. But let me tell you from a logistics perspective, again, I'm more than happy to admit this. Look, I've had a very sheltered and privileged life in India, right? Somebody is cooking, somebody is cleaning, somebody will drive you around, everything is taken care of. And here I got told, yes, princess, you have to take the public transport. Because in Adelaide, trains, at least that point, trains weren't that common. It's buses. And in India, where I come from, especially Mysore, I've never ever taken buses anyway. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I got told, yes, princess, you got to get on a bus to get to your campus. I'm like, oh, what do you mean? So that was, the cultural shock. And I share this not from an ego perspective, but from a learning, going to different country and understanding. Again, I didn't know how to cook or do whatever, right? I would get on Yahoo Messenger and chat to my mom or grandmothers or whatever and try and get some really easy recipes. Okay, how do I do this now? I have no idea. So that's the thing, because there was no Google. Google was just emerging. So there was no, Google Meet or Zoom or whatever. It was this voice messenger, which was, a privilege again, because if you used internet, mind you had to hang up the phone. So
I remember.
You remember that? And on top of that, you get either that, like the Yahoo Messenger, or get a phone card from Telstra or some other company, and that $10 would give you 5 to 7 minute conversation, depending on which phone card you're using, right? Because the connection fee and all those sort of stuff. So it was really difficult. As I said, look, as much as I missed home, there was so much things to do and to learn. You're forced to grow up. So I had to kind of put, your big girl pants on and, kind of get on with life. That's what happened. And the other thing, call it intuition or whatever it is, Australia did feel home. Something in me told me that I'll be okay, and I am okay. So there you go. Regardless of obviously, there's been numerous experiences and stuff and things I've watched and I've called out to as well. Not going to deny that. But all in all, I'm like, no, this feels right. So probably within the first year, I knew that there's two, you can have two homes. Maybe I didn't know how to articulate that.
Right.
Yeah, but I just knew, my intuition was that this is, something so special. It just felt like I arrived to this beautiful country, something to do with Manala. I always say this, even every time I make a trip to motherland, I come back here. Don't get me wrong, I'm still missing India. I miss home, I miss parents, I miss the food. But also, again, I do get this comfort of arriving here. The blue skies, this smell. I don't know how to bottle it up, okay?
Yeah.
There's this smell of Australia. So people might disagree with me, and that's okay, but this is my life and my experience. I'm forever grateful to have two homes.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with you because personally, I never wanted to move abroad. My mom will tell you that even when I was a kid, I would say, even if I go to study abroad, I will always come back. I don't see myself living in another country. And when the Pancho and I, we decided, that he wants to pursue his studies, I had a fit. I was like, I don't want to move to another country. So, but after 2 years of living here, when we went back home for the first time in November, I was so excited. But it did not feel like I was home. Like, I liked seeing my parents, my relatives, eating the food.
Of course, yeah.
There are so many other factors as well. In 2 years, I felt like my hometown Chandigarh had changed so much. Like, it is still called like one of the more planned cities. But when we went, I don't think I saw the sky, a clear sky, even on a single day.
Right.
And when we were in a taxi and we talked to the driver and we asked him, like, is it because of Diwali? Because we were there in November, right after Diwali. And he's like, no, that's how the sky looks. And from recollection, in like 2 years before, no, it did not look like that.
Right, yeah.
And when we came back here and I looked at the sky, it's like, yeah, this feels like home. This feels better. Like, I was happy I was there.
Yes.
But I'm happier and satisfied that this was home. And it was that moment when I felt like, oh, my definition of home had changed. So, yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
Oh, thank you. Because, yeah, same, right? I understand you too because, yeah. And that's okay because I think we are allowed to evolve and grow as humans. So, and I don't think anybody else should tell us otherwise.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, we don't love our motherland or we don't love our family, friends back home, nothing like that. And also doesn't mean by no means we are like forgetting our culture. None of that. It's none of that. You can have two homes. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about, your experience as a student. Were you working alongside? I know
I was again, quite fortunate that the first 2 years I didn't need to. And by the time I was in third year, that's when, started looking for work experiences and placements and stuff like that because part of engineering, that's a requirement as well. Wasn't very easy, and that too being on a student visa. Got about like pile of 60 or 60 to 100 odd rejections, and some even calling me Mr. Ravindra because that's my obviously it's Priya Ravindra, but then I'm like okay, but that's lack of whatever, the empathy or connection and all those kind of things. But however, I was fortunate enough to land some paid work experiences and also do things like, tutoring and stuff through university. So that's how, all my studies and, my work experiences all coming together. And then I ended up in EDS. They no longer exist because HP, one of the, again, global companies absorbed. But then at the peak, IBM and EDS, the electronic data systems, they were competing, two global software giants. So I was very fortunate to get into their graduate program and go through the various rounds of interview. And EDS again was one of those global companies. They didn't really bat an eyelid while I was going through different stages of student visa to this visa to whatever. They were able to sort of adjust accordingly. And there was time also when I had to take I think I couldn't be employed or be working full time, so I could easily get that 6 weeks leave of absence while the the conversion of visa was turning from this to temporary to permanent resident. That again was quite a journey, because for me one thing came through, because I know there's 2-step process, and look, I've forgotten all about it, but it was a bit frustrating. Looks like nothing's changed looking at the article you wrote, because for me one of the steps was easier, but the second part there was no way of proving it. I mean, I had the proof in the sense, luckily it was a registered post and I kept the registered post receipt with me. Clearly, who knows who lost one of the things in my file. So that went on and on and on, and that's why the reason was I had to take these 6 weeks of not working, although I was working, and then I had to. But again, shout out to companies like EDS, being the global company, didn't bat an eyelid, easily sort of understood the remit and what could be done or could not be done. They're like, oh, just go do your thing, that's fine, we're here. Nothing's ever, and my managers in EDS as well, I had some of the most incredible people as my managers. And I think that's again another reason I'm here the way I am, because they literally didn't want me to change even 1 ounce. I was encouraged to be myself, talk to clients, be loud, walk around the floor, and quite often again only one on the floor who could code and stuff like that. And then I mean, there were other women doing other things, don't get me wrong, but just somebody who knew actually sort of technical coding and other sides of things. Diversity was highly encouraged by EDS, because obviously being the global company, so I was so supported by them. I actually miss and I'm still in touch with a lot of my former EDS colleagues and managers, and shout out to all of them, because it makes a big difference, because people in positions of power, I think if they understand or not how much of an influence you can have on immigrant, basically students, immigrants, and that too women of color. Not a day anybody said anything to me, whether it's my accent or my skin color. No. I felt loved, genuinely loved, supported. As much as I was bawling my eyes out when I had to move from Adelaide to Melbourne. So and then when they were making a booking for my send-off lunch, they said it was so thing that they had to book out all of the restaurant, both the upstairs and the kind of thing, because that's how many people wanted to come to say goodbye to me. And just goes to show, right? I think when people say things, yes, there is racism. I'm not denying that. And often people hide behind that as, as a joke and saying I'm only joking. But some people, there's also people who do it, not even knowing that's racist, sexist or whatever. But if you turn around and you just, sort of hold your ground and call out those behavior, I was surprised at how many people are willing to go, oh, hey, no, I'm really sorry. I really didn't mean to, hurt your feelings or offend you, and have that conversation. And again, this is me being me, right? Because I don't hold back having that conversation. And in EDS, oh my God, I rarely ever had to, because it was so diverse and multicultural already. And also because they encouraged me. It wasn't in the workplace. It was actually outside. And interestingly, it was also happening, sadly, Australian Indians who were already there, running their own restaurants and stuff like that. We were working. If you go, we were not really treated the way if, say, proper Australians went to the restaurant. Food would come very late for us, and they'd come to our table very late. And I'm not saying not all. So let's call out on that too. People who've been here and you're being racist or discriminating your own people just because thinking young, who knows, whether you have the visa or restaurant. Regardless, I'm at your restaurant. I'm a paid customer. I need to be sort of treated the same way, and I do want to call out on that. So this was actually not to mention, I think I read this probably 5 or 10 odd years ago now. Couple of the Adelaide restaurateurs have been subject to all kind of legal kind of scrutiny, bringing people, not paying them properly and all those kind of things. So I just realized it's probably projection of their own thing. So, and I'm like, why did I even go to their restaurant and paid their money knowing that they were not sort of paying their own staff properly. But look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but then obviously I didn't know about that at that particular point in time. So let's call out on that too. Our own people being discriminating people within the community, based on whether it's gender or where you are from, how you speak your Hindi or don't speak Hindi, and all those kind of thing, and using religion as another thing, right? All those kind of things. So it's not just Aussies. So I think I want to be very clear here that that people are people. Quite often these are all programmed and learned behavior. And I think if given a choice, we should sort of speak up and give people opportunity to speak why they said what they said. And if it's absolutely coming from a whatever very, absolute horrifying negative place, clearly you do not want anything to do with it. You wish them luck. It's a learning experience for us too, and then you walk away. But sometimes when you have that deeper conversation, you can realize it was coming from a place of either fear, ignorance, or not understanding. So I just want to flag that because I've lived here long enough, and I know that Aussies keep repeatedly getting, sort of blamed and pinned as racist. Yes, there's an element to it, but there's also an element of creating that awareness and education and going, nah, mate, you can't say those things, okay? We can joke around, but you can't say that. That's not gonna work. And fair game, you'll see, how often they'll be like, they'll step up, they'll apologize, they will. Yeah, because
Yeah, I think you raise a very important point here about racism, that sometimes they don't realize they're being racist. But if you take the opportunity to correct them, they would actually acknowledge that. As opposed to the Indian community, where it's actually racism. If you understand the language, you would know that sometimes, on a public transport or something, they would say something that's offensive about the Australian who is sitting next to them, but they take advantage of the fact that they don't know your language. And it's also very interesting to the fact we call them racist, but maybe they're just conservative in their mindset, which is very similar to the way we know sometimes our parents or grandparents or relatives makes an offhanded comment that as youngsters we realize that's wrong, and we try to correct that. But with the Australian society, it's still the fact that they're still more open to correcting it. But as an Indian community, we are very set in our ways. So, that's an interesting point. So you were saying that you were in EDS in Adelaide, and then you moved to Melbourne.
What prompted the move? Definitely my husband. So when we got engaged, it was, obviously we were discussing, and I always say better shoes here. So I said I'll move, and obviously better job opportunities. So I took an internal transfer, and then I moved to Melbourne. We went back to India. We got married. As you can imagine, the big fat Indian wedding, lots of festivities, and it was a lot of fun because a lot of our friends from here also they flew to India, celebrated with us, and that was a very special time. And we came back, and again a few more parties, and it was really lots of fun. So that actually prompted the move. And also, look, I think I was looking at moving either here to Melbourne or to Sydney because I did want to commence my postgraduate studies as well. So So I was just, figuring out, I was working throughout all this time. It's not like I wasn't, but I was just, figuring out, okay, how do we do this? And that's when I met my husband at my friend's house. And we all speak the common language, Kannada, so tend to just sort of obviously group together. So obviously the intent wasn't like I wasn't even sure whether I was really going to move here, let alone be in touch with my husband or my boyfriend then kind of thing, whether we're gonna sort of see, okay, where it goes, are we even compatible? Even we are quite the opposite, we are very much the opposite. But no, it just kind of worked. Like we might be the opposite, but I think we work really well together. And I have to again, I have to say I'm very grateful because I've got somebody who is all about, he's about being a human being first. Gender is irrelevant, and happy to just sort of load the dishwasher, do what needs to be done just to keep things moving. So I think that and also being very upfront about our values and what's important to us. We've always been very clear about it, both of us, and I think it really helps. There's ups and downs, just like any life, relationships, anything would be. But no, I'm very grateful. Yeah.
And how was your just dating experience like? How did you introduce each other to your families, especially living abroad?
Yeah, in that way we were fortunate because it was my mom's one of the relatives who was connected to both sides of families. They already knew that we said hello to each other, but obviously they didn't know to what extent, what would come out of it. So down the track, when we would turn around and go, no, actually, we are compatible. So it was quite okay. It wasn't really where we had to just sort of worry or how it's going to go down and stuff like that. And especially from my family's perspective too, because my mom and dad always, they kind of there was that trust that I do what's right for me, and I'd definitely not jump into something. They wouldn't have sent me here all alone as a teenager in the first place, right? So, and I'm very grateful that they had that trust. But I think added to the fact that because, there was the common relative who knew both sides of family, and I think probably now when I look at it, probably behind the scenes, they were already hoping that there would be some kind of a matchmaking. But then mind you, through families, I've also said hello to a lot of other people as well. No, you can't, not marrying everybody. So in one way, I think, it was just that common thread helped. And obviously, the person who's connected to both our families, feeling very happy that, okay, look, just sort of, it's come to fruition, they're getting married. So I played a very key role, and I'm like, yeah, of course you did. No, thank you. But then again, it was interesting in the sense, and I do want to call this out because me and Sandeep, we were baffled and also equally confused that because we were here and we were fine, right? Like, yeah, whether him proposing in private, after like sort of, and then getting the ring or whatever it is. In India, they were doing the other things in the background, right? Like the families meeting without us, of course, like because they still have to get to know each other and do the ceremonies or, the prayers and stuff like that. Me and Sandeep weren't there because obviously we're here, we're working, and we were going to obviously, fly back for the actual, wedding, go ahead, do the shopping and, do all that. It's only like, again, right, this is so interesting. I lift the lids, having conversations, and I find out there was discussions about obviously like, just sort of things like lavish gifts being suggested by people to be exchanged between the two families. And also like, I'm like, hang on a minute, he came out as a teenager just like me, and so did I. He came to Melbourne, I went to Adelaide, we didn't know each other. We both have, been very independent, built our own, circle of like, little circle of, trust and, people worked our own way, built our own career. We're all doing our own amazing things. Then why is it all of a sudden just because you're a woman, you're supposed to be like, women's side of family needs to be talking about, gifting the groom's family about whatever. The minute I spoke of this to my husband, my fiance, he just cracked it. And he's like, who's having these kind of conversations? It's like, and I said, same, it's against my values. It's not. Sure. So that was one interesting observation for us being this far. And mind you, luckily, like both our parents are very like, they would never ever have encouraged any of these things. But interestingly, it's the extended family or people in the periphery or who I don't even know what's the relation. So quite frankly, if you're watching this, I don't care either. I want to say, because no, I'm not in touch with those people, right? Like, yeah, so somewhere, someone who's got, I don't know, nth degree of connection, trying to intervene and encouraging these kind of divide and, sort of like unnecessary conversation where you are all like creating that the gender divide, and also making it look like as if men are always superior, so you should just be grateful that you are getting married. Why? I never, excuse me, I came here all alone. I can live by myself too. I don't need anybody to that is no way disrespecting my husband or anything, like I love my husband and, like there's this mutual love, trust, and it's only gotten stronger, as years have passed. But the reason I'm flagging this is, in Australia here we're sitting, and in India all these kind of negative conversations have been going on, and obviously we put an end to all of that. But don't say that, just because, you go abroad, we forget our culture, we're all drinking, smoking, doing all kind of thing. No. What you see in movies is a glimpse of a movie, okay? It's an illusion, all right? No, that is not the reality. So please, let's have some, empathy towards people who uproot themselves and come here and carve a life for themselves. Let's have some kind of a, open mind about their journey. And that's why thank you, Mrinal, for lifting the lid. And, there you go, showcasing our journey and what we've gone through. So,
I think it's very appreciable. I know you and your husband have been married for like 18 years now. So
and known each other for 20 years now. So
So having that sort of connection and those open conversations, especially when it's just you two living in a foreign country, I think it's very important, because if you don't align on those certain values right from the time where you're supposed to get married to, when you have to build a life all alone, it becomes very important. And just saying, I would go one step ahead and say those are not lavish gifts. That's dowry. Let's just call it what it is. And I think that's really appreciable that you two stood up against it.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
And just on your journey together, I know that our lives as Indians back home, like you mentioned, it's very privileged, very sheltered. You have a maid who's probably, cleaning the house. People have someone who'd wash your utensils. Some people have chefs. You have easy access to private transport, whether it's Ubers, Olas, all sorts of taxis. In today's date, you have 10 minutes groceries delivered, and that's very different from life in a foreign country where you're expected to do most of the things by yourselves. So both of you living together, how easy or how difficult was it to navigate that? And how do you make time for each other, time for things you want to do, your work, and that sort of balance?
Absolutely. And I think I want to go a bit more detail into this because, again, the relationship changes once, because you already know I do have an 8-year-old daughter, light of my life, light of our lives. So newly married, it's not that hard, right? Because we both moved here as teenagers and we both know the Australian way of living. And clearly we both are, old enough to take our own, teacups or coffee cups in his instance, put it in a dishwasher and, take turns. If you're running late, be mindful, respectful of each other, getting takeaways or whatever and all. So that's all good. So, and that's where I think with my husband, it's always been like, again, quite grateful in that instance. But difference of opinion comes in terms of, because I'm very extroverted and also do things differently. I'm very clean and, not that I'm saying on record like my husband's messy, but his level of cleanliness is quite different. Like, there you go. Oh, look, we're human, right? Having arguments on, all these sorts of things, and so there's been ups and downs, and then and also I'm very organized, and again I'm not saying he's not organized, but then Sandeep thinks sometimes like you can be in this corner of the city and again get to another corner of the city and still do everything, and then I'm like, no, put everything in on a calendar. We need to know, those kind of things. So that was very, very interesting, just to sort of coming together and living together, because it's two independent people. So I think in that sense, because we both were living in Australia and kind of used to, Australian way of living, didn't really sort of introduce any complexities. It's just us bringing our schedule, our organizational skills and other things together, because Sandeep's like, okay, that's all right, let's go with the flow. I'm like, no, 2 o'clock means it's 2 o'clock, you can't be late. And like, but that's in every relationship, right? One person is like, that's okay, that's fine, calm the farm. I'm like, no. So I think that's where the difference of opinion. So obviously we would still argue. Then we say we disagree, huff and puff, and then in the next 5 minutes, I need this now. Can you fix this? So that's all goes around. What I feel with my husband is, because I met him, quite young, and obviously, we've been married 18 years. It's the journey and the growth we've gone together. We find that it kind of bonds you, because again, when you don't have a family here, you have to work it out together. And this is where I'll openly talk about, and I think quite often, again, in our, especially the South Asian culture, it's not often spoken about. I've got a genetic condition, I've got endometriosis, so which makes, obviously having children very difficult, and you live month on month, you live in debilitating pain, right? And it's like, it's a genetic condition. You didn't ask for it, but that's the thing, right? That's life. Things happens, and now I know it's, I think, 4 in every 10 women have this condition. And added to this, there's adenomyosis and there's PCOS and, all these kind of stuff too, right? For me, it took 11 years to get diagnosed with that. But then there was, already extensive damage. So for us, I suppose the most difficult part of that was, obviously that fertility issue. And anywhere and everywhere we go, because we'd been married for 4 years, 5 years, and people are asking questions, not understanding that we're trying, but obviously, and then again with the doctors too, you have to go, just follow the process, see how it goes for a year, and then, investigate things like that. And the reason I'm openly talking about this right now is because there's so much stigma around fertility issues, or even women's health condition. I just don't understand why. And the stigma around talking about painful periods or whatever, and just brushing it off, saying, just pop a pill, you'll be fine. Come on, don't be that, dramatic. Everybody gets period pain, only to now scientists coming back and saying if you have endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS, or any other conditions, apparently the pain you experience is equivalent to the pain of a heart attack. Thank you very much. So that's why I felt, of almost in so much in pain, praying that, I don't pass out or stuff like that, trying to manage, that level of pain. And to adding to that, you go into someone's party, some mid-aged man having a conversation with you. So why don't you have a child? Why is that any of your business? Why? Or some auntie somewhere in the corner making a remark that it's been too long, too long for what? It's just why is that any of your business? So, because especially people like me who have fertility issues, because it's a genetic condition and you didn't ask for it, going through such a difficult journey and countless, miscarriages and stuff like that. And again, now when I look back at it, and I'm very open now to speak about it, because I want to encourage women to know that it's got nothing to do with you. It's not, you should never feel guilty or carry the shame. It's the person who's bringing that up. It's their problem.
I think that's such a powerful statement to make, especially with Indian societies where, sexual relationships are frowned upon, but a baby is expected.
Yeah. What is that?
And your health and all these other things, there's just this sort of expectation that as soon as you're married, you two are not a family in yourself, you need a child to complete that unit, even though there could be a million reasons why someone's not ready. It could be health, it could be financial, it could be mental. There are various other reasons, when you live in a foreign country, you realize for many people, just one person working is not enough.
That's right.
And, a lot of immigrants are on temporary visas, student visas, already struggling with huge amount of student fees, visa fees, and, just changing from one to the other. They've got to maintain so many other rules as well, your private insurance and things like that.
Yeah.
And to just put an added pressure on them to have a child, just because it is expected of them, or they want to see a child before. I want to be a grandparent. You can't expect that of them, right? And I think just the sort of awareness that there is in Western countries is very different from what you would have back home, because I was just talking to someone I know, and he was talking about his ex-girlfriend, and she had the same condition. And he said that I have seen her in excruciating pain to an extent where I would feel so bad for her. And, these are conversations that you have in your office every day. And you realize the conversations that you have in the workplace are so much more mature than you would have back home. everyone talks about things like sustainability, environment, why do I want to turn a vegetarian? There was this conversation I had in my office around perimenopause.
Yes,
because we had so many, senior editors who are women and just talking about those stuff. And men are so willing to be a part of that conversation, which is so refreshing to see.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So, just with your journey, did you face any challenges? Did it take a strain on your relationship?
It did. Of course it does, right? Because when people are constantly but again, luckily for me and my husband, we are not afraid to have that hard conversation. And end of the day, maybe because, we've grown up together. We're like, no, we'll just, see how it goes. Whatever path follows, it follows. So I have, been on the IVF journey, and I've had the best doctors. It wasn't easy. I used to live in agonizing pain. There was a point in time where about 3.5 years of my life, I used to be constantly in and out of hospitals, surgeries, and a lot of other things, but as I said again, at that point, I felt so alone, other than my husband and like some close friends. I wouldn't reveal it to anybody else either, because you can understand, right? The stigma, the blame game, and if I had $1 for everything, being called me, because I, at that point in time, this is, like as soon as I turned 30, I got elected into boards. I have been the youngest board member in a couple of the boards at that point in time, where I ended up serving on both the boards for 5.5 years. I was also one of the youngest to do the accredited, the Australian company directors course. So I'm a GAICD for 10 years now. But when I was in the room, you should have seen again, I was one of the, I think probably I was the youngest, I think, because I got the scholarship to do it, because I was on the board and I was doing, all these things to do with gender equality and getting women to come in and do some IT project work, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, gain some experience and see if they want to enter the IT workforce and bring that gender equality into sort of balance, not just because they are women, but actually give them an opportunity, upskill, and all those kind of things, because I'm never saying quota should be for the sake of quota, but with intent, so that you get the right person. And once the playing field is leveled, then you can do all these other things, right? So anyway, it wasn't easy. Lots of commentary to my face, behind my back, all kinds of things, but I suppose you just kind of go, you just know who are your people when you go through difficult phases in life. And I think, we identified that pretty, quickly, and we were able to sort of, but it did put a strain, of course. It was very hard, not knowing what's going to happen. But again, fortunately, we're out on the other, side now. We've got our beautiful daughter. And again, it hasn't been easy, because my husband, in the early days of having my little one, he had to travel a lot for work. This is pre-COVID days, right? Yeah, so it wasn't very easy, right? And also for me, because of my genetic condition, to bounce back, that's another thing too, right? I went back to work when Eva was about 14 months. Again, the pressure we put on ourselves as women, bounce back like this, I'm not looking like this, I need to be back in workforce, because guess what, somebody went back just after 6 months, or somebody went back after 1 year. I'm not hitting. Really, is that even relevant? Because such a sad thing, right? Why do we do this to ourselves, judge ourselves, criticize ourselves, when we should be sort of empathetic, kind, and compassionate towards ourselves first? So I think everything that happened to me, all the difficult phases I've gone through, I feel like having come out of that, I have learned to appreciate myself so much more, and obviously my husband so much more, because then I realized oh my God, like when you start loving yourself unconditionally and also accepting myself and people around me, when you start accepting them with unconditional love, that's when you see, oh my God, I understand. I know what I was going through, but now look, this is my life lesson. Did you really need to go through that? Oh God, the dark night of soul. Sure, you've walked that path. I mean, we all do. We all have that journey. But yeah, when you come out of it, I think it just makes you so much better as a person and evolved, and brings so much more kindness and that extra love in your heart. So you can see, different layers of people. Yeah, where someone's treating you badly, you can see how much they're hurting, and hence they're treating you, negatively. Doesn't mean you need to put up with that. No, I'm not saying that, because boundaries are very important, and that as South Asian women, we need to, kind of go, yeah, I can see you're hurting, but you cannot project that on me. Saying stop. Yeah.
So Priya, you mentioned that you have a daughter, and we've obviously previously touched upon how you don't have that sort of support that you would have back home. So as a working mother, what do you think are the challenges, or if there's anything that works in your favor when you're here?
Yeah. One thing, obviously, look, of course, I do miss my parents. I'm not saying no to that, because, obviously that means my daughter can't have the most time with grandparents. So, of course, that's always there. But I'm loving that I can raise my daughter here to be a free human being first, to follow her own life purpose, to love herself, to be kind to herself and to people around her, and the fact that she doesn't need to listen to things like, if you're a girl, you're this, or if you're a boy, you're that. Which, look, I think India is progressing, but let's be very honest, it's not there yet. So that's why I feel very fortunate that I can raise my child as a human being first, human first.
But coming back to the question, people say that you need a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
How do you find that village as a woman abroad?
That's a very, very good question. For us, how it worked was, after having Eva, obviously, as I said, I went back to work when she was about 14 months old. But that again, happened because of my village. I didn't want to go back into my corporate girly, career path. And I was wondering, what do I do? And that's when I had the opportunity to start my own project management consultancy when Eva was as little as, 14 months old, because through a friend of a friend, there was a project management opportunity for a not-for-profit group. And they were only seeking somebody for just 1 to 1.5 days a week.
Okay.
Thank you, MCM and Hester Hornbrook, because guess what? I'm still with them. It's been, oh my goodness, coming close to 7 years now, this May, June, So I went for a cup of coffee, and now I'm still running IT and business projects for them as an independent consultant. I was so fortunate to get into an organization that respected, my expertise and works with me with that trust that it's a very kid-friendly organization. So I can just go at 2:45, pick up my daughter, take her to ballet, sit down, log into my computer, still do my emails. So if I need to take calls, I can do that, and then get on with life. So it's that give and take. So in my instance, so that work village has proven incredibly valuable, because guess what? In my workforce, not just me, there's many other women who are in similar boat. We all have children or elderly parents, or you name it, whatever it is. And regardless of your gender, whether you're a dad or mom, you get the same opportunity to just pack up, go do your thing, log in, work from. I just feel so blessed. So I love them. Again, here they go. To me, I think, and it also helps that, and I'm very open to admit, look, I'm a workaholic. I love working. And I always have, even as a student. I'm like, I love my, my schedules, my things.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it because somebody else is saying. I just love to push myself. I just want to see, okay, how far can I go? What can I achieve? And it's got nothing to do with jealousy. And I'm never ever is about bringing other people down. It's about me trying to get to the best version of myself, coming from a place of truth, my truth, not about, sort of bringing anybody else down. So yeah, coming back to that point, I think maybe because it's just the way I work or whatever, throughout my career, I would say there's probably 2 or 3 specific incidents where I haven't really liked my work environment. Otherwise, I've always had a work village. Works for me, whether, as an independent woman, a married woman, or even as a working mother, because people completely get it, where I'm coming from and what I need to do. And there's that expectation, the mutual trust and respect, knowing that I'll get things done. And they'll also know not to put like unnecessary pressure, knowing that how much I can do. So if it's part-time, I can only work 3.5 days a week, spread out between the 5 days. They're happy with that, and I'm happy with that. So, we can make it to work. So that's one side of things. And the second thing is, with my lovely little being able to build friendships with other, sort of families and parents, whether it was childcare or school. Shout out to all my beautiful, friends. We are a village. So again, we always show up for each other. Someone's running late for the pickup, somebody's always there. And sometimes if my husband's traveling, somebody goes, nah, drop off ish, you'll have a play date, I'm here for you, you go do your thing, you come back. That's just incredible, isn't it, to have that. So yeah, very fortunate. So what happens is, it's almost like friends, like family. So and also people who stick with you during the difficult times, then you really know who your people are. And also I think we've had to kind of filter our network, and I'm not at all sorry, because there's many people I don't keep in touch with right now, whether it's consciously or they're kind of like subconsciously I've kind of moved away. There was no alignment, never felt good. There was no support, or respect for me for what I'm doing, rather than still getting told as too much. I still don't understand. Women are multi-passionate. We are multi-dimensional. We can have it all. So I don't care what anybody has to say. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a well-established businesswoman as well, because Punar is only it's my second business, mind you, and it's a startup, and it's hard work, but I'm, building it with my community, with people's support. I also know that I'm a good wife, I'm a good mother, I show up, and I'm also a good friend and a good daughter. I try my best. And you know what? And this is the biggest difference. I stick with my version of good, not someone else's definition of good. So it's not my job of fulfilling someone else's expectation. So yeah,
I think you raise a very important point there, that it's about fulfilling your expectations and not someone else's version of you that only exists in their mind.
That's right.
And especially in a foreign setup where you have so many things going on for you, like you've got Punar, you've got your daughter, you've got your social circle, your personal life. So just balancing all of that is very important. And sometimes I've seen that it also creates a lot of pressure on women to, do all of that, and sometimes they end up losing themselves in the process. So how do you always keep that front of your mind so that, you don't fall into that trap?
I fell into that trap and had to learn the hard way to honor myself. And COVID, I must admit, COVID was one of the biggest, eye-openers and sort of awakening for me, because same, just trying to, juggle all, do it all, running my, project management consultancy, a lot of people supporting, few people saying, it's only part-time, like, you want to come and look after my child, do all the drop-off pickups while my husband's, overseas or interstate or whatever for work. We're doing what's best for our family. Didn't ask for your opinion. And again, there you go, because I can't sit quiet. It's fine. But still, I used to sort of, be reluctant to say no, and kind of like, again, just, all right, I'll just do this, I'll just do this one more thing. I'll just do this another thing. But then when COVID hit, having seen, the repercussions and how, life is beautiful and life can change suddenly in, matter of seconds, right? And I've lost people too back in India during COVID times, and people who were very close to my heart. That was like, when you sit down and again have those hard conversations with yourself, are you really fulfilled? And then admitting that, look, I was doing meaningful and, like obviously keeping busy, doing all the right things, but then was I really following my heart's purpose? No, I wasn't. And that's where Punar came in the picture, right? I love nature always. My family has coffee plantation back in India for generations. This is my dad's side of family. And I'm very grateful that I've got family members who are still taking such good care of the land even now, to date. School holidays, being there, like everything. So I'm not an accidental hippie or I didn't wake up all of a sudden to become, this sustainability person. I always knew I needed to do something, in that space. And obviously I do love, textiles, clothing, and like I do love beautiful things, whether it's silk clothes or, beautiful dresses and things. And I've always been sort of, quite often I get asked, like, where'd you get that? How do you style that? Like whatever it is. So this was in my 30s. I always knew I was going to start something. And I thought, okay, maybe, a women's fashion. But then even at that point, I knew I wanted to do it differently. Like, but I just didn't know how to. Because probably, at that point I was going through, my infertility issues and trying to obviously like manage my board career and also a regular, corporate career, all those kind of things, literally so many things on my plate. So it was kind of still in the back of the mind and didn't think, but I think during COVID started like, sort of putting some time toward like, looking at the state of like, how is India, what's happening, and then sustainability. And then when I started learning about textile waste and the impact on environment, couple that with the mistreatment of humans, because 70% of textile workers back in India are women. Yet who are the most underpaid? Surprise, Mrina, take a guess. Who are the most underpaid?
I don't know. Is it women?
Women, right? Because why? They can't speak up. If they speak up, they're worried that they'll lose their jobs. So I knew something had to give. So just before COVID hit, through my networks in India, I had been introduced to this, suppliers who were using recycled yarn and, trying to create fabric and sarees and stuff like that. And I'm like, there's more to this. Kept in touch during COVID. Started putting my own money, time, effort, energy, everything. But I went through a process because I needed to make sure that the workers were treated, in a proper way. So that's where, doing all the due diligence and saying no to few organizations because they wouldn't even let me talk to the workers. Even after I said, I'm happy to sign an NDA and I won't, like publish all that. So yeah, anyway, like just sort of, it was really, really interesting. Then I went, chose the supplier. Weaving with recycled yarn is not easy, right? Oh my goodness, that went like, so long and so hard. And often, same, right? Questioning myself, why am I doing this? But it took somebody very close to me, that's my uncle's passing, to sort of sit down in grief. I started questioning my life again, saying, what am I doing with my life? Where is the true Priya? And that's where I'm like, okay, you know what? Nah, I have to do this. And as always, I had to have some hard conversations with my husband as well, saying I'm going to do this and stuff like that. And we've had our share of disagreements, but it doesn't matter. Regardless, he always, supports. Like, that's the thing. But that doesn't mean we shy away from conversations. No, we don't.
Right.
It's that respectful communication that's very important. And I think, that's the reason I'm still, just sort of, it took the reason I'm speaking about all these things is, it is quite okay to lose yourself, because guess what? Sometimes, often, when you lose yourself, that's the only way you can sort of, pause for a second and go, no, I'm really lost. This is not me. Reflect and then put your pieces together. So, and that's called life. It's called life experiences. It's called unlearning, healing, and, moving forward. So, yeah.
Is that how the name Punar came about?
Punar came about, yes, actually, you know what? Resilience had a lot to do with it. But Punar in Sanskrit, as you know, it means again. Used in the context of rebirth and rejuvenation. It was ode to three things. First thing is an ode to our women, the makers, the artisans, where they're often forgotten. And when they're seeking this new start and, kind of safe jobs in textile industry, which is very hard to come by, not many good news stories. So we're giving them a chance again. And textile waste, taking that, weaving that into beautiful fabrics and creating beautiful gifts, and now moving into the fashion space, supplying fashion textiles and all those kind of things as well. So that's another thing, right? Turning waste and giving waste a new life again. And last but not the least, giving consumers a choice to choose right again. Because this day and age, I get it. Look, we are all imperfect, and I don't think we need to beat ourselves up. But if we can take that one step, right, whether it's during festival or a couple of times a year, I know we'll all make our Kmart trips, but if once in a while, if you can pause and go, nah, this time I'm going to pick up, this from this whatever sustainable or ethical brand, doesn't make a difference. But for that, consumers need the choice, not the greenwashing and the, how it's like the green hashing or the green whatever shouting, whatever you want to, the fear-based thing that's driven. I don't buy that at all. I think we need to take one step at a time. So giving the consumers that choice again, do the right thing. So that's how Punar came about. Yeah.
And I love the fact that Punar is sort of your bridge between India and Australia, because I know you have artisans working in India, but you have a lot of corporate clients in Australia. Do you want to expand on that? How does it feel like, and what your vision is eventually with the brand? How's the response been?
So far, the response been phenomenal in the sense, look, because, initially when I started as an entrepreneur, you take calculated risks, right? It was just purely handloom, which is taking recycled yarn, weaving into beautiful product, fabrics, and then making products like tea towels, tablecloth, or throws and stuff like that. When the first little batch sold out, that's when I got the courage to go, okay, this is something nice and working. So again, forever grateful for the community, for the support and things like that. But I have grand plans, and I'm not shy about that. But I was very conscious in the sense I needed to do this the right way, ethically and consciously, making sure we are partnering with the right organizations and knowing 100% sure that women are being, trained, upskills, and creating jobs for women and paying them, fair wages and stuff like that. So since starting in 2022, now we've finally ventured and partnering with a couple of other organizations now where we're working with suppliers from different parts of India, not just South India. And two, we're also venturing into using combination of local, sustainable fabric plus heritage, which is, upcycled sari or upcycled, lega or whatever. Use those fabrics and create, our own unique fashion pieces or, robes, whatever it is, you want to call, still can work as, gift. But like looking at expanding the things like wedding gifts and, women's fashion, that's all, that's like in the pipeline. Corporate side of things, still very, very keen to support, whether it's like, small, medium, large organizations. I'm not really fussed because, as a startup, we're quite flexible with the MOQs, right?
Yeah.
We can create things in their own preferred brand color, add their brand logo, and, do whatever needs to be done. But our difference is we've always supplied an impact card when we make things for organizations. So that means they'll know how much waste was removed from Earth and how many women worked, or how many hours of employment was created, so that it's like, it's such a, great thing. Now pitching to not just Australia, New Zealand region, now taken that very bold step since last year, pitching to US, UK, EU, where there's, more stricter regulations around textiles, as you know. Now going full steam ahead, pitching and trying to get myself, in front of it. My North Star is to create sustainable textile hubs around the world, creating safe jobs and financial freedom for 10,000 women in total. And that can look multiple ways, not just supplying sustainable products, right? Also things like fabrics, being able to provide advisory services, providing, tours for, people who want to tour India and see the handicrafts, the artisans and things, exploring that. And again, through that, creating awareness and also like, tourism and employment opportunities, but both in India and also Australia. And one of the things which is most dear to my heart right now is exploring something with the beautiful First Nations community, because there's a lot of artistry both in the First Nations community and also with the Indian artisans. Want to bridge the two, weave them together, weave it all together, and set up unit here in Australia, provide jobs for migrant women and people from First Nations community, then create jobs, turn Australian waste into some beautiful, sustainable luxury products and sustainable products, and share our story to the rest of the world. I mean, why not? So, yeah.
That's incredible, and good luck with that. I mean, I don't think I could have had a better first guest for the podcast, because you're the perfect reflection of, an Indian mindset and how you've just fit so well with the Australian community and how you're trying to bridge the gap between the two with your work, not just with Punar. I know you're so involved with the community work as well. That's how we met, and you've always shown up for other people in the community. So yeah, you're doing incredible, and I feel so fortunate to know you and be here and just talk about your journey in detail.
I feel exactly the same way now, because that's the thing, right? Yeah, we met through a community initiative. I think it was the Sari. So, thank you, Sari Collective, for bringing us together. And I feel exactly the same way. You're always there for people, and end of the day, I think, we're all here having this human experience, and I think we can learn our lessons, but I think we can do it with that kindness and love. And, if we can leave this world a little better than how we found, I suppose, it's so fulfilling. Yeah. So
right.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. Just before we wrap up, I've got a few rapid fire sort of questions for you, which I would prefer that you answer in less than 5 words.
Okay.
If possible.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Favorite city in Australia?
Adelaide. because that's where I land. Adelaide, yeah.
Favorite city in India?
It's actually a rural part, Coorg.
Coorg.
Where I'm from. Yeah, my grandparents, my ancestors' place.
And the food you miss the most from India?
Interestingly, it's the rice flour roti called akki roti, which is a specialty in South, especially in Karnataka. So, and it's gluten free, so works just fine for me.
I had an idea that you would say that because I've seen that on your story.
Excuse me, yeah.
I've seen that on your stories on your recent trip, and you were posting about this rotis, and they look really nice.
Yeah.
Your favorite local cuisine in Australia?
I definitely would go for Asian fusion, so things like red spice road, that's always been my favorite. So that that South Asian influences, but equally I love maha, that again, the Mediterranean flavors. Somehow I think it always has to be that fusion. And there you go. And last but not the least, when it comes to Indian food, oh my goodness, Manpreet, our own very curry queen, yeah. God, her food, yeah. Divine. Yeah.
Your favorite tourist destination in Australia?
Within Australia, I'm going to surprise people. I love Tasmania. Because I'm always the country girl. Can't take that out of me. So, yeah.
Perfect. And just before we wrap up, the last question. Do you have any advice or anything else that you'd like to add to an Indian woman who's sitting in a foreign country and just wondering if she took the right step?
My answer is yes, you've taken the right step. Trust yourself. Believe in yourself. Because if you don't, who else will?
That's so powerful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Priya, for being a part of this podcast. And thank you everyone else for watching and for listening in. If you liked it, please like, follow, comment, subscribe. You know the drill.